Sup, Dinkaloons, and welcome to the first episode of the Sounds Goodish podcast, where I sit down with musicians way better than me and try to get insight on what makes them tick and what makes them great. Today I'm here with Family Jules. If you know me, you probably already know him and love him, but he's an amazing musician, guitarist, and producer who's been making heavy metal covers of video game songs on his YouTube channel since 2010. He's played guitar in full-on video game releases like Crypt of the Necrodancer and Cadence of Hyrule, and we're not going to talk about what he does with his doorbell in the privacy of his own viral videos, okay? We're above that here. Hopefully you find this insightful, and if you do, go check him out afterwards. And with that, Family Jules. Hello.
Hello, Lyle McGrath.
I've never met this gentleman in my life, correct?
I have never seen this man ever in my life before.
No, it's good to have you here, man. You are the first guest on the channel, and that's on purpose. I wanted you to be the first guest because I've known you longer than anyone else in this sort of music audio sphere, and I've found with learning this stuff that the most valuable advice that I've gotten hasn't been from like Yngwie Malmsteen going like, I goofs off faster, better than you.
Yeah.
I've always felt like I've learned better from the proverbial like older kid on the block who's like ahead of where you are now. And you've been one of the people that's been that for me, and that's very much the vibe I'm going for with Sounds Goodish. So I figured before we start burning through topics, I'd give you a chance to drive. In this whole world of audio and music and stuff, what do you find the most interesting? Like, what do you want to nerd out about?
I think the most interesting thing to me is the journey of it all, and how that usually leads people into creating their own musical voices. There's very few reasons why people get into music in the beginning. It's like, oh, I want to be a rock star, or oh, I want to be Miles Davis, or oh, I want to, be Dead Mao 5. Whatever it is that they want to get it. Like, they project themselves onto that lifestyle and say, that's where I want to be for whatever reason. And I feel like everybody going on that path, it kind of branches out into everybody's own musical journey, where every single human being on this earth has a different musical voice that nobody else can replicate. And every musician that doesn't capitalize on that, or every musician that gives up at some point, kills that voice. Like, that they make that voice never to be heard. So I think with that end goal in mind, with the understanding that the thing that crafts that sound is the journey that each musician goes on, I think that whole process of it in kind of an abstract sense is the thing that I find the most interesting about music.
Yeah, I know totally what you mean. I've described learning an instrument as probably the closest thing in real life to, when you watch like an anime or something and everyone's kind of got like their own thing. It's like, this guy spits bugs and this guy can teleport, and they're equally matched, but they do totally different shit. And everybody has like their own like crazy power. And obviously there's going to be different skill levels. Like, there's going to be people that are objectively better than you. But even if that's the case, that you still have your thing that you can do. It just depends on how you refine it.
I don't know. Like, I've always been proven wrong when I say like somebody is objectively better than somebody else. Like, I don't know. It's so hard to not think subjectively when you start comparing people in the same kind of tier of guitar playing or musicianship or whatever. And it's so hard to pin down those lines of where those tiers start and begin, because everybody says oh, I'm a beginner guitarist, or oh, I'm a mediocre cellist or whatever. But it's there's no way to tier that and section that off.
Right. Because I know people that are, in my opinion, way better than me at guitar, and I know people that are, in my opinion, idiots. No, but just people that haven't been practicing as long, and even the people that they know 2 songs and some scales and stuff like that, but sometimes they'll just whip out something where it's like, whoa, you can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that all has to be like you can't just ignore those things, because those things were practiced in all the same ways that, you're either a jack of all trades or a master of a few. I know very few guitarists other than the handful of virtuosos that I'm sure everybody has in their head, the Paul Gilberts, the Guthrie Gobins, the John Petrucci's, that just seem like they're good at everything, but most of the time you'll have somebody who really focused on something, or decided that they were going to try and like put one stat point in every single thing in guitar.
Right. Yeah.
Like I would actually categorize myself in that school where I would say that I'm pretty good at everything on guitar, but I'm not like amazing at any one thing. So like how do you stack that up against somebody who's like the fastest like, you know, tapper sweep, the fastest sweeper in the world who can't tap, or the fastest legato player that the second he has to pick more than 3 notes he falls apart. Like I don't know, you just, it's so hard to compare. And I think what's like when you kind of like, you know, take that whole thing down of just kind of like the who's better, and just kind of look at it more from the point of like, well, everybody decided to learn what they wanted to learn, and that has crafted your musical voice as like, in addition to just the notes that you pick, you know, that just like in the same situation, like you or I might choose different notes in the middle of an improv solo, or if we're tasked with writing a song or something. And I think that choice, that's one been, you know, nurtured by all of your influences, but I think also there's a bit of nature there.
Yeah, because regardless of skill, you have different taste from someone else too.
Right. It all goes into that. And the second that you kind of like let go of the whole like, this person is a level 3 you know, shredder, but a level 2 jazz player or whatever, and just kind of say like, well, everyone kind of just learned a bunch of shit, and now we're all like melting pots of every single shredder like that we looked up to. For me, I mean, I grew up with a lot of like Sin Gates from Avenged Sevenfold, you know, mixed with a lot of Lamb of God, Death Clock, stuff like that. So like nestled just under there. So you get a lot of Sevenfold influence from me, but with choices of the other ones, and that kind of colors that sound. I think, I don't know, I guess it's such an abstract thought of just kind of like musical identity and musical voice and musical choice for the notes you pick, that I think it's hard to really kind of put that into words. But that was the first thing that came to my mind when you said like, what's the most interesting thing?
Well, we're talking influences and stuff. You've been making covers on YouTube for what, like 10 years now, with very little breaks in between. So a lot of what you've been playing on the guitar wasn't really like written for guitar. Would you say that would be like a majority of it? And what effect did that have on your playing?
I would say the brute force of my professional musicianship is that. But there is kind of there's definitely a hard line in the sand between like something I'm doing professionally and something I'm doing artistically, technically. Like I feel like honestly in the beginning I always told myself like, well, if I try to play things that aren't supposed to be played on guitar and I like figure it out, like that's gonna give me like maybe some kind of like upper hand or something. Like it's gonna kind of carve like a really weird but unique sound out of something like that, because I'm probably going to be playing things that were primarily written for a keyboard or a synth or whatever. But yeah, I feel like when you're learning guitar, like you're grinding like the technical aspects of, you know, if you want to learn tapping, you start with Eruption by Van Halen, and then you kind of bridge out from there. But I feel like actually what I found is I learned so much less from the video game aspect, like that stuff, and it's more of just kind of like okay, with everything I've learned up to now, how do I tackle this? And sometimes I might learn things, but I feel like the things that I really latch onto are actually things like I recently did Unseen Ones from Hades, which is one of the boss battle themes from the game. And that was actually played on guitars, and it's absolutely incredible. Two incredible guitarists, one of which is Godspeed, who I got to meet at NAMM, back when, human beings were allowed to be within 5 feet of each other. What was cool is while I was learning how to play that stuff and, trying to learn it by ear and stuff, I could hear like pentatonic runs or scale runs or sequences that are written for guitar that then I could kind of just file away in my mental arsenal of riffs, more so than like the Mario theme. Like what in the Mario theme am I gonna whip out to convey some musical idea in the middle of a solo or a composition. I think that kind of actually worked against me in some ways, but I've definitely learned immense knowledge of composition from doing video game stuff primarily.
You also went to music school. Not a lot of people know that about you, I don't think.
Yeah, it's not a very important aspect. I mean,
you don't think so?
This is always the question, and it's always the most like, there's like almost like ethics involved with talking about music school for musicians,
right.
Which is weird, but like,
well, okay, rather than ask is music school worth it or not, like I almost feel like there's not like bad knowledge. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that? It's like, as long as you're not learning something inaccurately.
Do
right?
guns? Do guns kill people, or do people kill people? I mean, like you know, like it's like what you do with the knowledge, I think, is.
Well, I mean, like, I don't think there's a world where you learn like a harmonic minor scale and then you just go, I wish I could forget that because it's made me a worse musician. You know what I mean?
I actually, this might be whatever, but that's actually exactly what you do, which is what's insane.
Really?
Yeah. So pretty much anybody who has made it through the full circuit of music and music theory and music whatever, not me included, because I didn't get a full. I only have my like associates in classical guitar performance is my degree, but pretty much what I've heard from most people is that you go through school, you learn all this music theory, you learn how to make music that sounds good, and then you get to music theory 4 and you learn how to make music that sounds bad but pretentious, and then you actually learn theoretical things about music theory after that. And then ideally you throw it all out, because you don't want to sound like scales. You don't want to sound like sequences. Like, you don't want to be able to be picked apart by somebody in the audience who, you know, also went to music school, because we don't want to make music for musicians. We want to make music for people.
Right.
You know,
right.
And I think at a certain point, the idea is that instead of just like being in front of a piano and hitting all the notes randomly, which, you know, it seems like some pianists do, it's more so that you learn the patterns and you hear the sounds, you know, that you're able to hear the sounds and replicate them in the same way that later you will be able to hear it in your head and make that decision as if you're speaking words in a sentence. And when you're speaking words in a sentence, you're not like, okay, now I will construct the subject, verb, object, whatever. Like, you don't have...
yeah, these are the acceptable words to use in this sentence.
Right. But you need it at some point in your life to go through that process to then understand and then get to the point where you do it fluently. And I think with music, it's very much a similar thing, where at a certain point, you're not thinking about harmonic minor anymore. You're just thinking like, that's the sound that, you know, you have it in your head, and your hands just know how to do that. You don't have to make that decision. So in a sense, yeah, you do have to forget all of it at a certain point, which is something
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of an aspect that, like, that's another kind of like thing that I don't like telling people, because there is that ethical thing of like, you know, that some people are just gonna be like, oh, well then why bother even learning it in the first place?
Is that like the musical equivalent of drop out of college and start a Minecraft Let's Play? It worked for me.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that, like, I would say that those people weren't in the right place anyway to go to music. Like, I think a lot of people, you know, go into music school because they think that somebody is gonna redeem their degree for, you know, their occupation as rock star at some point at the end of it, or maybe they don't even think that far ahead. They're just like, I know I like music. I guess I'll go to music school. My reasoning for going to music school was I'd already started a YouTube channel that was, you know, starting to take off, and I started feeling really self-conscious about the fact that was a thing, and I didn't even know what a seventh chord was. You know, I didn't know how to construct that. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. You know, my musical knowledge was a bunch of numbers on a fretboard, which is tablature.
Yeah, I wouldn't know the feeling at all. I don't know what kind of an idiot would start a YouTube channel that they're totally unprepared for.
Well, the thing is just like, dude, the guitarist from the Misfits, I mean, maybe bad example, but like, you know, like when you look at somebody like, you know, Doyle, like, he knows how to play like 3 chords, Blitzkrieg Bop, and then the Misfits songs. That's all he knows how to play. He doesn't know anything else. Like, and he's, you know, he's probably set. He's probably musically, he's happy with where he is, and I mean, that's another whole aspect that I think like that's super abstract and difficult for people to realize is like, what do you want to do with the music? Do you want to express yourself? Do you want to make cool songs, or do you want to just get laid and do drugs? Like, there's much cheaper ways than going to music school to do the latter. But like, I think it really kind of comes down to making that decision and then following through. That if like I always wanted to be a person who knew what he was talking about. I don't like being in that position where I'm just like, bro, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, like, and I'm also very interested in the mechanics of it all. So it was important for me to go to music school so that I could learn in a setting that I was going to thrive in, because I know for a fact that if I try to learn it, everyone's like, oh well, you can learn anything on YouTube today. It's like you're not gonna learn anything from YouTube, because you're gonna watch one video and then it's gonna recommend you, I don't know, some meme shit that's gonna send you down a meme hole for the next like 3 hours. Like it's so hard to stay like focused, especially for me. I know some people are different, but like for me, the reason I went to music school was because I wanted to learn in an environment that required me to do homework, or I wasted my money, and I wasted a lot of money, and I wanted to have that pressure to just, get it over with. So for me, I got everything out of music school that I wanted, and I cannot say that about a lot of the people that I saw go through that program.
So if somebody made the choice not to go to music school, what would you say they should be concerned about, like, working on that they might not intuitively think like, I need to work on this, because a lot of learning on the internet is just knowing what you actually have to seek out information wise, you know what I mean?
And that's where it kind of comes down to having, like, if you don't know the answer to that, then you need a private instructor. Like, and that's something that I used to be like, no, just figure it out on your own, man. Just figure out your own sound, man. But like, the more I think about it, it's like to really nail that stuff, or at least identify where the problems are, you need somebody who can actually sit there and be like, okay, play me something, like give me your best song. Let me watch what you're doing on the guitar and let me pick it apart. I think that's insanely important. It's not available to everybody, but I would put a hard thing down on either you need the discipline to be able to like, watch like a YouTube video of somebody who's insanely good at guitar and literally be able to like unbiasedly pick apart your own playing, which is insanely hard, or find a private instructor who can at least help you identify the problems. Like they don't need to be a really great teacher to be able to help you start identifying where those problems are. I mean, how the teacher helps you figure that stuff out, usually draws the line between like a good and bad teacher, but that's my advice, I would say.
Well, you have been, in a sense, kind of learning very publicly, because you've had your YouTube channel for so long. If you go all the way back and watch like your first video, it's probably very different from your most recent one, and the progress is like very tangible, but it's also just out in the open.
Yeah, that was I don't know if on purpose is the right word. I think I am a very self-disciplined person, I would say. And I think like I have no problem like making like really crazy challenges for myself. Like I have no problem setting my mind to things if it comes down to like, just tunnel visioning on one goal. And at that time it was like, if I have to force myself to make a video on YouTube every week, and pretty much when the week is up, I just got to upload whatever I have, then that's going to be the best thing to progress, because I, like many other musicians, got stuck in that rut of sitting with projects for way too long, like not knowing when they were done, because I mean, no project really is until you decide it's done. That's when it's done. It was an accident that the channel picked up steam, I think, in the beginning, but I ran with it, because I saw that it could potentially be a career. But like, the original idea was that it would be, like, I don't want to look stupid in front of 3 or 4 people who are watching these videos, or somebody who might like come across the video just searching for something random. I had a cover before everything that I did with a bunch of my friends in high school, where we covered Afterlife by Avenged Sevenfold for like a talent show kind of thing that they did every year. And I had to do all of Sing Gates' solos and stuff. And I remember the video getting like 3,000 views, and I like lost my shit. I was so excited. I thought I was hitting it big with my Avenged Sevenfold cover that hit 3,000 views. I mean, this was like 2009, but I remember I got a comment of somebody who like ripped apart my solo and pretty much told me that I should like just throw the guitar away, and like essentially like straight up John Petrucci psycho exercises, like sell your guitar on eBay and, you know, never pick it up again, kind of a thing. And I don't think it was that bad in retrospect, but it definitely it could have been better. But that was definitely a push of like, I don't want to get comments like that anymore. So that was
that was kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Would you say that insecurity, and also combined with the fact that, you know, you've got to watch a video of yourself over and over and over again while you're editing it, playing the thing, would you say that kind of forced you to examine your own playing and identify your weak points kind of on your own?
100%. I would say that, but there is also an element of when you listen to something long enough, it starts to sound right. I'd say the same thing kind of happens with, I mean, I know I don't have to tell you this because of your history with like animation and stuff, but the same thing with your eyes. So like, if you look at something for long enough, eventually you start losing kind of like the margin at which it's acceptable or not, or if a joke is funny or not, or if any of that, like, so I would find myself like hyper focusing on these projects to the point at which, like, you know, you'd wake up the next day and be like, why did I do that? Like what happened? Like I remember distinctly last night looking at that or listening to that, and it sounded fine. But I mean, I think that hyper analysis definitely was to my detriment as much as it was to my my progress.
So if you go back and you watch your old videos now, is there anything that you would be like, if I could, you know, send old Jules like 5 minutes of like, fucking turn this knob, stop doing this, like what kind of advice would you give yourself back then? Like, what kind of stuff took you like way too long to learn?
The number one thing is stop making music for other people, because the second I started making music for myself, and like kind of listening to it and making decisions based on what I liked, that's when my skill like skyrocketed, because I constantly made these EQ decisions that I thought I was supposed to do, like that didn't even necessarily like apply to the instrument that I was doing it to. You know, like you're always told, whenever you, at least back then, like you would always look at like a how do I EQ metal guitars? They always tell you these very specific frequencies to cut. But everyone's using completely different tones, you know? So it's so stupid that anybody would ever tell you to do something like that. But what sucks is that when you're in that stage, when you're learning that stuff, that's the only thing you can latch onto. To like think about some kind of abstract, like, okay, well, if the guitar has, you know, piercing frequencies, then you have to kind of start telescoping EQ around the 9K hertz and start working your way down. It's like that stuff, you can't latch onto any of that. The only thing you can latch onto is somebody who's like, oh, well, the guitar is muddy unless I turn down this frequency. So you can't tell somebody like, okay, don't do that. Like, I think the best way to do that is just, there's two ways to do this. Either tell yourself that like, okay, I'm going to make music that sounds good to me, and I'm not going to make any decisions unless I can't myself tell if it's good or not. I think a lot of the time my worst mistakes were when I would either play something or mix something in a way that I was like, well, I can't really tell, but I think I'm supposed to do this. Always the worst mistakes I ever made, just because it would be based on some tutorial or something somebody told me or something, and it wasn't actually based on the music that I was listening to. And those were always the mistakes I made, you know, like 4 hours into mixing when I couldn't even hear what sounds good anyway, and I should just go for a walk or, you know, run off and, I don't know, play a video game or jerk off or literally anything else other than like sit in front of the computer for another hour.
Masturbation breaks are a very important part of production.
Yes. Yeah.
If your control knobs aren't sticky, then how will you turn them? Your hands would just slip off.
Listen, I've been trying to find a way to write off my jerk off time for years now, and once I figure it out,
it's a
business expense. Yeah, dude, when you're self-employed, you got to take anything you can get.
Yeah, don't I know it?
One day, I bet there's going to be a way where we can mix in our sleep, and then we can write off sleeping. That's the That's the dream.
That's the dream. Literally.
Yeah, literally. I hate it. Anyway, either that or have a specific person that you are making your music for. You don't even have to send it to them. It could be, Gandhi. I don't know. Like literally, like tell yourself, like, what would Gandhi think of this lead guitar tone? It sounds stupid, but like if you have an individual person in your mind, it's so much easier to think of a tangible, objective opinion. Like kind of manifest that in your head more so than what does the general public of YouTube, what would they think? Like it's impossible, and it just makes your stuff worse, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I recently did a song that was kind of supposed to sound like an 80s song, like a Motley Crue style thing. And I found that the stress of kind of dialing in a guitar tone that's just supposed to be this ethereal idea of like the best guitar tone, like kind of totally went away when I was just like, oh yeah, I just want something that sounds like Kickstart My Heart or something. And then I could just make like this sort of like caricature of an 80s guitar tone. And I think it turned out really, really great because of that, where I just kind of like knew the sort of broad, oh, you want like a Marshall, and then you do this, and there you go. It's an 80s tone. And I don't know what Gandhi would like. I don't know if he would like it, but if you're thinking in the concept of who am I trying to impersonate or what vibe am I going for, almost like you're doing a caricature of like a tone. That's at least a good starting point.
You need a starting point. That's it. It's just anything specific, because like if you leave anything up to just like an amalgamous like blob of like something in this region, like it creates too many variables. I think options are, literally like the worst thing ever. It sucks because like that's what's always marketed to musicians. Like targeted ads are like, have this new EQ, have this new reverb, and then you put it in your giant chain of all of your reverbs and all of your EQs, and you don't know which one to use in all of your situations. And all it does is it just like bogs you down. And I think the best decisions I've ever made as a musician have been the ones that like limit me, like tell myself like I have to release this video, like I have to just like no, this guitar tone sucks, but you know what, like I've spent 3 days on this guitar tone. There's a point at which I just have to say like no, like the guitar tone's gonna suck, we'll figure it out later. I'm not in the right mindset to fix this now. Time limits, deadlines, and yeah, man, like just have a specific sound that you're going for that you can A/B. Like just pull up a song on Spotify and I don't know. I think it's so important to like if you're lost as a musician, it's because you're not being as specific as you need to be with your goals and with your direction.
Would you say that having to produce your own stuff, I mean, first of all, do you think that like every musician nowadays has to also kind of double, at least to some extent, as a producer?
No.
So you think that you can still just kind of get good at an instrument and that's it?
I would say so. I mean, look at Instagram. Like, I mean, I know a lot of Instagram, guitarists and stuff, it's all fake and, going through a DAW and probably cut up DIs and then, repurpose. But I think that everything with music right now, especially with how immensely, I wouldn't say oversaturated. I think we're starting to enter a time where like it's so oversaturated that it's starting to break up into subsections of places where you can thrive and be successful just by being a prominent member of a subsection of, this might be your Cole Rollins or whatever, who cover like, just straight up like just do banger covers of already like metal songs, or your scenes like the VGM space where, you have like Rashad E.B. and, Talk Fraternity and myself, or you have these Instagram subs, where it's just like, yo, watch this shred for the next 20 seconds. Like there's so many different places. And I think production helps, but you could be the best player, the best producer, whatever, and still fail miserably at these things because there is kind of that element of persistence and luck, right? Where you have to just put out like an unreasonable amount of stuff in a short amount of time for the short attention spans that Instagram, Facebook, Twitter requires, YouTube especially. But I would not say that you need to be good at producing, because there is always huge exceptions to that rule. But you always load your dice with every aspect of musicianship that you can pump into your into your craft, into the thing that you're pushing out. So if you can learn production, definitely it's not going to hurt, and you might as well get started on it now, because you're going to suck really bad in the beginning, and you know, you might as well like finish projects as much as you can in the beginning so that you can get better faster. But if you can't do it, I don't think it's a break situation. I don't think like you don't have a chance.
Would you say that having to produce yourself has helped your musicianship in knowing like what will sound good, or what choices might not actually go well once the whole song's put together?
I mean, I would say so. I mean, you know, like however you might write a song, whether that be like you write it in Guitar Pro, or you write it out in MIDI, or just like on your bed with an acoustic guitar or whatever, like I feel like you always have an idea of like what is the ideal setting that a listener is going to hear this song, right? It's always going to sound different from those three things that I said than in a fully produced song. So there is kind of that aspect of like, you're not going to know how it's going to sound laid down until you lay it down. It's tough because like I feel like you're kind of asking more so like the technical aspect, like
I mean a little bit. I mean, if I'm gonna like throw a specific at you, okay. I feel like the kind of stuff you play, even when you're like picking like what octave to play something in, like, do you think that some of that is more production minded than it is sort of guitar minded or music minded?
Like theory minded? I think it depends, because in the first aspect, it would be like if I felt like something was muddy, my decision would be to spread out octaves, right? So like if I want to play something in the lower register of the guitar, but I've got a rhythm guitar track also playing in that register, and it might sound kind of muddy because like there's too many notes next to each other, I'll get a lot more clarity out of that melody line if I played an octave up. And I might not hear that unless I laid it down first. As far as the second example, it might just be easier to play in a certain octave, you know, and at a certain point you just got to be like, well, okay, am I going to kill myself over this melody, you know, like, or am I just going to play it in the octave that it feels and sounds the best, and work around that? In the third example, I would also, it depends, because all of them have a stake in it. Theory wise, you can completely change a chord based on what octave the notes are in, and that's something that I never realized until way later, because you just kind of like, once you learn that there's only like, you know, like what, 12 notes total, but like only 7 in a key and usually only 3 in a chord, that you can kind of spread them out, and it's the same kind of chord pretty much. But like, if the root of the chord isn't in the bass, you have to call that chord something else because it has a different feel. So you usually call it, like if a C has an E in the bass, so it's like an E, C, G chord, that's a first inversion C major chord, which doesn't have the same like oomph if you end on it in a song that's in C major. You know, you want a C major chord with a C in the bass, and typically a C in the highest possible voice as well, to give it the most force at the end, the most home tonic feeling. So sometimes it could be good for production, good to play in the hands, but then when you actually lay everything down and the whole chord sounds like unstable and weird, then theoretically you have to change some notes around because you probably have a weird inversion going on. So this is the point at which I would say you could drive yourself absolutely insane trying to figure out how to specifically take on these situations before you get there, or you could just cross those bridges when you get there, like, and just kind of and wing it. To bring it almost full circle, like, I try to throw all of this stuff out the window, all the things I've learned, until I get to a point where I need to open up that toolbox. Like if I'm composing something, I don't want to think about chord function. I don't want to think about you know, subdominance, and I don't want to think about like German augmented 6 chords or whatever the hell those are. Like I want to think about like what sounds good. You know, I want to put my hands on a fretboard, play a random chord just like I did before I went to music school, and if it sounds cool, all right, let's see where I can go with that.
So it's less about the mindset and more about expanding your problem solving tools.
That's how I use it. I wouldn't say that's the way that everybody uses it, but that's the way that I've had the most mileage out of it. Is every once in a while I'll get to that place that everybody gets to where it's like, all right, I don't know what chord to go to next. And and then I can equip that knowledge of like, okay, well, let's analyze these chords and figure out what like, okay, we're on a subdominant chord. Okay, let's go to a dominant chord. You know, all right. Then after I've figured that out, then I throw it back all out, and I'm like, all right, back to, you know, now that I've moved through that, let's get back to just spraying notes as it usually ends up being. Just, I think, you know, when you were asking about like, you know, what would you tell yourself, you know, go back and you know, grab myself by the throat like Bart Simpson style and, you know, tell myself to fix something. Honestly, like my true answer is I wouldn't. I'd let myself figure it out, because I feel like, you know, just the same reason why I know you were talking about like wanting to start this is like I hate watching, you know, a guy who throws one of his 175 Fender Stratocasters into a pile and be like, oh yeah, so then he just plays the arpeggios and, oh well, so if you can't do this, then, you know, I guess get a metronome, go practice, which doesn't help anybody, you know, because nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to have fun, you know. And I feel like it's me growing up, like I always told myself that if I was going to be successful at music, I never want to forget where I am right now. Like I never want to forget this feeling that I have when I'm frustrated and trying to just like, you know, understand it. And this feeling of like everybody who's trying to help me understand this, like they can't even see the ground from where they are, you know, so how are they going to help me? So I think the biggest aspect of that is you really do got to fail. You really do got to fuck up, man. Nobody helping you is usually going to like slap your fingers with a ruler every time you make one technique mistake, which is what everybody feels like they need. They need like, I need somebody to kick my ass. I need somebody to like, everybody who like has those last ditch effort, like I feel like I suck at guitar and I just need something to just whip me into shape like really fast. It's like it doesn't exist, you know? Like the thing that really makes you good is just being really bad in an environment that pushes you like, you know, Twitch plays Pokemon style into a direction of good, you know? Like I always like look at Twitch plays Pokemon as this weird like chaos that if it's even just slightly in the direction of your goal, like it might be slow, but eventually you're gonna get there. And I think the same applies to music. And I think the best thing you can do is don't be so hard on yourself. Don't like it sucks. It sucks right now, and that's okay. If you're really struggling as a musician, that's gonna happen. And either you're gonna give up and you're gonna be a big baby about it, or you're gonna make it through it, and you're gonna look back at the time that you're at right now and be like, wow, like
now I'm a bigger baby than I ever thought I could be.
Now I'm the biggest baby. No, I really think it helps to just like make specific goals for yourself. Don't just sit down on your guitar and be like, today I'm going to get better at the guitar, and then not have like a specific like, all right, I'm gonna get better at, you know, my harmonic minor or whatever. Like that's the best advice I can give. Other than that, just put yourself in an environment where you're gonna get better if you suck, you know, because that's really what pushed me along.
Jules, it has been a goddamn pleasure.
Dude, absolutely. I love nerding out about music, and it's fun nerding out about music to somebody who also nerds out about music. It's truly one of the most pleasurable experiences in this life. I've had good sex worse than a good music talk.
and you've had much of both. Yeah.
Thank you for putting that out there just so that everybody knows.
Oh, you're welcome.